As the wind erodes and the water corrodes, altering everything we think we know, but we don't. It's all temporary, and it used to, but now the thought doesn't scare me or keep my feet from following one after another until I slumber. Then my mind, not my feet, wander and dream of people and places I'll never see again. I've mended as much mental anguish as I can, and now I try to use this language to take these thoughts from my head to my pen. Cause though I don't speak of my dead friends or the circumstances, often the blow never softens or yields. I'm in a desolate field, lonesome stargazing, night blazing, chasing traces of remembrance and reverence of relevant friends and acquaintances, and faceless and nameless names and faces. And while my mind is racing through these photo albums and quotations, all these people and places far from me, for only land and stars I see when I'm outside of the Mile High City, which is not my city, for I was born 1,000 miles northeast of there, in the land of beer and lakes and pistol fire on MLK's birthday, where there is no minorities and segregation's mandatory. But that's a whole nother story altogether, and no matter the weather or hardships that any place brings, I'll still laugh when people shiver and say it's freezing, or say, hey, no, wait, I already had 18 mixed drinks, but I guess it's a Midwest thing, and I'm a mess from a dirty city and brought most of this filth I've gathered with me.
Welcome to another week of Experience Andy Weins Live. And this week, we're going to be talking about how discipline ain't shit. Yes, I do have over 20 years in the military. Yes, I'm a business owner. Yes, I have a great life that is structured every day. And discipline has not got me here the more I think about it. Let's talk about that coming up after the burst.
My work labors on as lovers sleep in each other's arms, remaining calm and collect. I begin my self-reflection process of redemption. Honestly, I don't know where this road leads, or if I'm even going. Could be rowing upstream, or worse, chasing my dreams to the peak, to finally be somebody doing something with what I have, rather than saying again and again that I can't and I won't anymore from this day forward. Cause Lord knows the past is set in stone, the present is yours to mold and to use for future uses. I know I'm a nuisance, I'm told, cause I'm neither young nor old, nor giant nor gnome. I don't sleep on these streets usually, though I've made thrones of my own. I don't sit well with idle hands, though don't know what to do when I'm home all alone. I'm a menace thrown from society, and as it lies to me, I'll smile silently as others do as they please. I am watching and listening, and I'm grinning all the while, cause sometimes all you can really do is smile. So as the work labors on, I'll keep on singing my songs, and the day's never done. We just keep on spinning around that sun, and well, through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.
Welcome to another week of Experience Andy Weins Live. And this week, we're going to be talking about discipline and how discipline ain't shit. Get into that in a moment. First, I'm going to take a moment to express gratitude. Every week, we talk about gratitude here on the show. This is my one opportunity every week to be mindful of what I am grateful for, and the people that allow my greatness to come out. And this week, my shout outs to Barbara Fagan. Barbara reached out to me on LinkedIn last week. She's read my book. She listens to the content. She reached out, said, let's have coffee. She's also in the same vein as me, speaking about the power of language. Essentially, we're looking at neurolinguistics programming at a fifth grade reading level. How do we convince ourselves that we are truly capable of the person we set out to be. That's what I talk about every week on this show. So it's great to have someone like her who has a much different background than mine. 30 years in the medical industry. She's got a master's degree. She teaches at a level different than mine. And yet we came to the same conclusion, which is words do, in fact, fucking matter. That's why I wrote a book about it. So thank you, Barbara, for a great coffee today. Very inspiring. And I had planned on doing the show today about discipline. And her and I chatted about it a little bit more. And we doubled down on how discipline ain't shit. So it's how art imitates life and life imitates art. And now here we are creating this ecosystem of individuals that are empowered through the use of language, because we know your words control your thoughts. Your thoughts ultimately dictate your actions. Your actions reap your character, and your character will reap your destiny. It all comes down to the words we use, and why I come together with you every single week to talk about these words, this fuel that we feed ourselves every single week. Second thing, one thing Barbara and I both do is workshops. I like to travel all over the country and do presentations and workshops, everything from a 45-minute keynote all the way up until a 4-hour workshop. I want to present the material in my book and more material that I've learned since writing my book to a wider audience, to go really deep, make it all about the audience, having a conversation with the audience. Last week, I was fortunate to speak down in Miami at a conference involving the waste and recycling industry. We talked about how words move mountains. How do we eliminate the word waste from the waste industry? So that was a custom keynote I built so that when we look at the recycling world, how do we change the world waste to resource? And once you start changing that one word, it changes the entire narrative. How do we look at items that are discarded by others? So for you and your company or your conference you have coming up, the power of language is universal. It crosses all industries. So whether it's a custom keynote or one of my language of leadership keynotes, I'm excited to get to know you, get to know your business, get to know your objectives, and how we can bring language and the language of leaders to your organization. All right, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Discipline ain't shit. A lot of people through the years assume that I'm a disciplined individual. They assume that I prioritize working out. They assume that I like the details. These are all things that it takes in order to be strong in the military and strong as a business owner. Those are great attributes to have. And yet discipline, you can talk to my mom and dad, is not a priority to me. It never has. Now, there's that old adage that discipline is greater than motivation, right? Doing something consistently over time works. And I was a huge proponent for this. I said here on this show, right? Discipline creates freedom. It's one of my favorite sayings. 2 weeks ago, I sat down and I was shooting new content. You'll start to see some new content that I'm putting out there. And one of the questions was prompted with me. He said, let's talk about discipline and start the statement with how discipline doesn't matter. And I was like, well, discipline does matter. He's like, well, why? And then I sat there and I went, hold on. Does discipline matter? And we had a philosophical conversation about discipline. And I realized I really don't value discipline. Discipline is not a better sentence instead of saying I don't. Discipline is not a priority. I'll make it all about that word. Discipline is not a priority to me. Structure is. That's the key component. Discipline involves the human element, and humans are full of failure. That's what we are. We're fallible humans, right? Fallible creatures. Now, structure, process, never lies. Structure goes back to the SMART goals. It's clear and concise. It's singular, measurable, obtainable, relevant, timeable. You have the structure, and you can say yes or no, versus saying good or bad, versus having this human element to say, well, am I disciplined? Did I do the things I set out to do? So I think about it in my relationships with people here at the business, right? We have structure throughout the day. We call it keep the cadence as one of our fundamentals in our business. These are the things we do every day. Here are the things we do every week. These are the things we do every month. These are the things we do every quarter. These are the things we do every year. We create that structure throughout the year. And then even the meetings, we have an agenda. We stick to the structure. And now when we stick to the structure, we're no longer holding each other accountable. We're not holding ourselves accountable to what we sought out to do. We hold ourselves accountable to the structure that we've now created. As I was sitting there with Barb today, she had right on her phone, the discipline is greater than motivation, right? And there's true, because motivation peaks and valleys. The thing is, same with discipline. Discipline goes up and down depending on how you wake up that day, versus structure keeps going as time marches. It reminds me of a story of the first two or the first people to make it to the South Pole. There was two teams that set out. The two teams, one team had this idea that when the weather was right, they were going to they're going to go as hard as they could, get as many miles as they could. And then when the weather was bad, they hunkered down. That was their structure. And they went by the way of the weather. So they started off much faster than the other team. The other team said, we're going to do the same exact distance every single day. They had whatever it was, 40 days to cover, let's call it 40 miles or 400 miles, right? So they do 10 miles a day. I think it was 20 miles, but whatever it was. Either way, they said they're going to cover the exact same amount of distance every single day, regardless of the weather, regardless of how people are feeling. They're going to come down to and do the exact same set of miles every single day. They made it to the South Pole and they made it back. And on their way back, they found the other team that never made it. They froze to death because when they had the discipline on the good days, they set out and did 15, 17, 20 miles, whatever it was. And on the bad days, they had the discipline to stay hunkered down, and ultimately killed them. Versus having the structure to say, this is exactly what we're going to do every single day, regardless of all these other factors. When you start living your life like that, you'll realize what you have control over and what you no longer have control over. Often here in the business, I talk about it. I talk about how we control the situation doesn't control us. And that's very, how do I say? I was about to say closed-minded or narrow-minded. It's certainly limiting, right? Thinking I can control the situation, as I say this out loud now, right? A lack of stoicism, if you will, a lack of acceptance that the world is going to punch you back, right? This idea that I control the situations, I'm giving myself a lot more credit than what I can. What I can say, though, is regardless of the situation, I will do this. I will achieve this within my life and within my business. And this is what I do every single day. This is what I do every single week. I have the structure to do so. Even going back to the coffee in the first place, I realized this when I talk to fixed-minded people. Her and I had this conversation. When someone says to me, let's get coffee, let's get lunch, let's get together for a one-on-one, I say, sounds good. First question I always ask is, what works best for you? Okay, we figured out the when, right? Then we figure out the where. Then I always ask for an email address. And people are like, here's my email address. Because while we're in the vein, while we're in this conversation, I have the structure to say, okay, we're going to figure out when we're going to meet, where we're going to meet, and who am I going to meet with. Here's the email I'm going to send to them. I'm going to have them verify. So now we are on the exact same sheet of music. Versus the people say, oh, we should get coffee sometime. And I say, okay, when? And they never get back to me. One last thing. I now know their lack of commitment, their lack of discipline, their lack of structure, their lack of desire. It's insignificant why we're not moving along. I know that they lack the structure to make sure that their hopes, goals, dreams, objectives actually happen in real time. How you do the simple things is how you do everything. When you have structure in the things like getting a cup of coffee, it shows that you are able to create a process for yourself that works for you. I know some people write everything down. My girlfriend, Jenna, she has pages and pages and pages of notes. Me, I barely write anything down. That's her structure. That's what works for her. She puts things on her whiteboard. She erases them every month. I put notes on my phone. That's what works for me. When I want to come back to something, I go back to my notes I have in my phone at all time. That's my structure. And I know when I choose not to do that, I end up failing. I end up failing myself. I end up not following through on the things that I know are best for me. One of the things that her and I have done recently, talking about structure, is going for walks. We know it's best for our digestive health, our mental health, everything else to go for a walk every day. And going right after you eat for digestive health, right? It stimulates your body, allows you to process your food sooner so that when you go to bed, you've already processed your food, so your body goes better at rest. Sounds good, right? So the structure is simple. After we eat, have that hour of time set aside to go for a walk, go for a hike. And then we can look back and say, okay, how often did we meet those expectations versus having the discipline to say, oh, we'll do it when it's convenient. Oh, we'll do it when it's not raining. We'll do it when we have nothing else pressing. No, the structure is we eat, then we walk. We eat, then we walk. And we also fail along the way. Last night, we did not go for a walk. Earlier today, she texted me, let's go for a hike tonight. Absolutely. Let's build that structure in. No different than putting your pants on before you put on your shoes, right? Develop that structure in your day so that you achieve the things that you want. There's so many people in this world that say they want these things, and yet they're not willing to put the work in. And the reason they're not willing to put the work in is because they don't have the discipline. Fine, get rid of the discipline. What structure will you put in? Mike Konkolowitz, who talks about this in Profit First, his structure every day, he puts his running shoes on top of the toilet seat. He puts his running shoes on before he relieves himself every morning. He's got his running shoes on. Well, what do you do with running shoes on? You go for a run. That's the structure he builds. He puts the shoes on the toilet seat the night before because he always does it the night before. That way, the next morning, regardless of how he's feeling, he's got to put his shoe. He gets to put his shoes on before he pees, and then he's ready to run. He's ready to work out because he put the structure in place. His entire book about putting money aside, putting your profit first, putting your long-term savings, putting your tax account, taking all this money that comes in and put it into buckets, put it into envelopes, put it into bank accounts before you start spending it, all started by putting his shoes on his toilet seat. Look at your life. What are the things that bring out the best in you? What are the things that you get excited about? What is stopping you from doing more of that? What structure can you put into place in your life so that you habitually do more of those things that amaze you? Final story. I had lunch today with a woman, and I'm gloating about my relationship. Oh, we do this and we do that. And she said, well, you guys are young and in love. She's like, I've been with my husband 25 years. And I said, okay. I said, how often do you guys go on date night? And she kind of laughed. Well, whenever we can. I said, okay. What about date night once a week? And she kind of gave me a look like, well, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Structure. Pick one night a week and say, that's our date night. My girlfriend and I decided Wednesday nights is our date night. That's the night that works out best for both of us. We've both been given the opportunity the last couple of weeks to sign up to play volleyball on Wednesday nights. And we both looked at each other. We said, no, we're not going to play volleyball and trump our date night. So we have structure. Wednesday night is dedicated time set aside for date night. No phones, no kids, no distractions, nothing. So whether we go to a nice fancy dinner, we go for a hike, we play a game together, Wednesday night is our date night. We now have the structure built in, and now we have the freedom to do whatever we want because it comes down to that first thing, time. People often bitch about priorities and their time management. Time management, what a foolish thing to say, to think you can control time. No more different than me thinking I can control situations. We all get the same 1,440 minutes a day. What are your priorities? What structure can you put in place so you prioritize the things that are priorities? Prioritize your time doing what you do best, what serves your long-term purpose. Comes down to structure. Where do you dedicate your time and energy throughout the day? Take the time this week. Do the fucking thing. Take the time to look at your week. Do a 2-week time study. Sit back and look at the moments that make you happiest. How do you get more of that? Tell the fucking world. Tell the people, your significant other, your business partner, your kids, what else you want in this world. And then finally, show the fuck up. Show up for yourself. Build in the structure, because that structure will create the freedom that we all desire. We'll see you next week.
Through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.